All right. Good news. Well, Dr. Chris Lemmon here, and this is Wellness Code. And we're doing a little chat, which is kind of like an informal get together and a chat on the training. And the last training was training number 5. We're doing one a month on the webinars on this particular sequence. So the topic that we throw out was as a little bit of review. We started looking at how you operate, because I don't think there's a general plan that covers all humans, right? If we go big enough, yeah, we can all have doors about the same size and chairs about the same size. It's really kind of nice for a keto, because the chairs, the chairs they put up will fit everybody. But when it comes down to when we start to zoom in a little bit and get a little more personal and start to make discernment of the differences, we find that then all of a sudden we deviate a little bit, and nothing really is a perfect fit for all of us, right? And so that's what we start to look at. We start to look at how do you operate. We want you to start to examine it, because as we start to move into the wellness code, we're going to be really looking at you being able to figure out what you're doing so you know what to change. If life, in the level of complexity we're at right now, if life is trial and error and we tried something new, oh my gosh, unbelievable the amount of years we'd have to live to go through all the variables out there. It's just taken me a lifetime to read the 2,000 books in this room. I can't begin to imagine. There are probably that many books published every year now. It's just really very scary. So we really have to find what I call cheat. We have to find a way to cheat. We have to find a way to set up a little bit better. And so our 2 months ago, our talk was about, where'd you get your idea for healthy from, right? Did you learn that from your family? Did you learn that from your friends? Did you join a group? Do you have a circle of influence? Where's that perception come from? And if it's working for you, don't mess with it. If it's not working for you, then we got to start to explore that. And when I say working for you, I'm not talking about you're dying from cancer. I'm talking about, do you have indigestion, right? We could go all the way back. Do you have crooked teeth? Do you have dental challenges? Do you have sleep disorder, right? Do you have any type of sleep apnea? Do you have tight joints? Do you have considerations that are tough in your body? We've normalized a lot of the things by saying, hey, that's just normal, or that's just growing old. Sorry, Raymond. The guy that wrote a book about that. Anyway, he's probably not out there listening, but I just said sorry to him anyhow. Raymond Francis. He got really upset because the doctor said, Raymond, you're not sick, you're just getting old. And so he actually walked away from the doctor and started eating better and got healthy. And today he's healthy as a horse, and he's 80-some years old. So all those changes we can make, but we just really got to discover that we want to make them and what that means for us and where we can go with it, right? So I've been teaching you that we pick things from a range, and we have ourselves in a range because it's got to be relevant to us. Life is about movement, and movement requires balance. So if you're going to move somewhere, you've got to find a balance point somewhere. You don't want to be moving alongside the edge of something, the edge of a cliff. You want to be somewhere in a balanced place where you've got a little room to fluctuate. You could go a little left, a little right, right? That's what we want. We want a range to play in and to support the idea of who you are. And as you develop and expand in complexity, expand in value, then those start to move out. When I say expand in value, I mean there was a time when we would have thought maybe just belonging in a tribe was sufficient, or being an ex-Marine was sufficient, or being a school teacher and being of service, or a nurse being of service was sufficient. As we started building complexity, we found it's like, wow, I'm not sure that will run out my lifetime. I'm not sure that's good enough. I want some more depth. I want some more characteristics. I want some more traits. I want a little bit more out of life. And that is developing. It's evolving. It's moving forward over time. It takes a lot of time, but it's most certainly working. As complexity moves in and the time that these curves start to expedite, right? So for eons, everybody has been writing. Plato even said that he wasn't too sure books were a good thing, and that you can never tell the truth by reading a book. I don't know what he would say about the internet, but was kind of a scary. Aristotle, all those people, when books came in, they were a little prone against it. The academic vision of the teachers of the time didn't like the idea of books coming in because you didn't know who to trust. And now today we're buried in a world of books online and YouTube videos and all kinds of stuff. And we still are the same quagmire, like what to trust. And so we're moving always in the direction of a truth, but I define the truth as an activity, not as a thing, but as an activity. It's the activity that you do in being, or it's the activity that brings you balance. And so your truth is always a relative piece, right? So relative to what's going on now. And I don't think in the terms of relative in a second. I understand that there's a whole genre of every moment you change your mind, but I'm thinking relative in the scope of how quickly you can change the idea of who you are, which is not easy changing your definition. It takes years, slowly changes. And so it's relative to that rate of change. It's different for everybody, okay? So that's a bit of review. What we were trying to do this last month is we were trying to look at your approximation to what healthy would be. Get out of your story that you had of what healthy was, look at your life, and then start to think about it a little bit. Maybe look up a few things online, say, wow, maybe I don't get enough exercise. Maybe I don't get enough sleep. Maybe I have some issues that I just wrote off. So start to envision a little bit. Start to imagine. That's creating, right? Start to imagine, start to create an idea of like, if I were to imagine healthy and build a definition, approximately what would I need for that, right? We're seeding it. We're starting to feed that into it right now, right? We're starting to get you some life experience doing that so that you can then look at that and say, wow, last week I thought this was healthy, but you know, I've been eating cottage cheese all week and my stomach's really upset and I'm not all that sure this is going to work for me. Cool. You just learned something, right? It's great. So maybe you start to realize that, wow, cottage cheese has a little lactose in it, but has a lot more cases in it. Maybe some aspect of milk or dairy you really have reactions to. You don't know until you start to play with it, right? You can't even really depend on history today because we start to realize that some things seem to have a genetic marker, but there's lots of evidence to indicate, I sent you some samples of marshmallow experiment, that we can actually change those. We can actually make those changes. His research showed that we could take kids from low income and he had a group of kids from low income that should have just never gone on to college, and somewhere around 60% of them accomplished all those objectives. It's absolutely amazing when you look at what we can do. We have to kind of stay open to that possibility. And the big challenge we face right now in the quagmire of chaos that the world is going through, right? In the state of change it's going through. It's always in change, but right now, at least in the United States right now, in Canada and some of Europe, we're going through some similar changes. And it's quite a big quagmire because the approach that we're leaving had a history, so we know it really well. The way we're moving into is very unknown, and it's quite a bit of deviation from where that past was. So this is a confusing one. In 100 years, it won't matter to any of us, and everybody around will go, oh, they were just old people, right? Whatever, right? They were crazy old people. It's okay. But I'm advocating better quality of life right now for all of you out there. And that's what we're trying to put together. Can I get on the bandwagon here? I don't have to lead the band, but can I get on it? Can I not get stuck in this? Can I not be in reaction to this? Can I not be frustrated? Can I not hold on to things out of the past? I see two big challenges in health. And one that I see is that people that start to hang on to reactions, they have a reaction to it, right? Even a reaction to medication, it gets you the number 5 killer, right? So when people have reaction to something, they start to build themselves a belief system. I believe when this happens, then this is the reaction that occurs. I'm sorry, you're not your reaction. That's just a familiar piece. You don't have to do that. You have choices. You just need to attend to it and open that up a little bit. But if you're always at reaction, all of a sudden there's a stimulus that comes around, you're going to find yourself sick and down for the count because you can't get out of your reaction. And that's what I see that makes a lot of people sick. The other thing that I see that makes a lot of people sick is they hang on to something. If you think that the world is going to go all of a sudden back to the way it was 20 or 30 or 40 years ago, lots of luck. I think that's going to have to be on your tombstone, waited for life to return. It always has momentum, and it always moves forward into complexity. It has done that the whole life of humans on a planet. I don't see it changing overnight. So that's the direction that we're starting to move in and kind of acknowledge. So you have to be willing to let things go. Most of the time when people that I have that are ill, it's not that they're hanging on to something they know, right? Because what we know is really so small, it's unbelievable, right? It's about 6, 7 points. And so over 90 points of everything that we have in the points are just packages. Some packages, like these books back here, some got 300 pages, some have 600 pages, some have 1,000 pages, some have only 200. So each book is a bit. And so each one of those bits, some different sizes than other, but each one of those bits, you can only manage around 6 or 7 of them at one time. So all the rest of those, we've got somewhere in the unconscious that are references, and a total different matrix of sorting and a total different matrix of being able to relate in there. And the only input we have into that is usually in the language of what we call emotions, right? And my story is that the emotions are just simply like on the outside, we've taken reactions and labeled them in association to events. I think we've labeled the energy by an emotional title and association to the event. That starts to frame up in our brain, and our body reactions totally differently. That becomes more associated pieces. But I think they're just associated pieces. I think we can change all of that. Maybe not in this program, right? In this program, we just want you to start to discover what your range of healthy is and what you can start to do that, right? And we're going to give you some markers to start to build those ranges, all right? We've got 2 more months of looking at variables going into building that range, and then we'll actually start into the wellness code. I think the last 5 months is really going through the protocols involved in putting this package together. But anyway, that's where we're at so far. So the first thing that I mentioned in the last webinar is start to get the idea that we perceive the world to be a certain way, but we can actually change our perception, right? Most certainly we can change our perception. That's, once again, not holding on, which I just mentioned. Move forward, change our perception. If we think we were picked on for being whatever, right? Race, religion, whatever. If we think we were picked on, we can start to change that perception. I'm not saying that wasn't true. I can't say we don't have to set it up for the future. The 2 techniques that I brought up in creating a healthy range for you are setup techniques, of course, because we're setting up a new healthy range for you. So you need 2 setup techniques, and I've taught them for years as setup techniques. And the first one was convert anything that comes to you as a demand to simply a request. In your perception, look at that and said, you know, they're rude people, perhaps, but they're making a request to me. I have the right to say no. They may get upset if I say no, but I have the right to say no. It's my game, my game. I have the right to say no. That makes it a request. If you feel that energy coming at them and it's a push, it's a demand, it's a force on you, you have to look at that and you have to say, sorry, I'm not accepting that force. Not what I'm doing, because that's not healthy, right? It's extremely unhealthy. It's extremely stressful, right? We all know that. We all know deadlines. We all know demands. And if you go, one of the greatest successes in psychological studies is that they've actually took some facilities and they trained their employees to start to recognize deadlines as a request. And they started to making a game out of it, being able to see how they could marginalize deadlines and play with it a little bit and compete and also support everybody as a little bit of a game. And it took the stress level down. It took the absentee rate down. It improved the wellness in the organization. And there's quite a few of them that have been able to do that and get some great results. So they're doing that same thing. They're learning a way to turn what appears to be a demand into a request out there. And I've been doing this for quite a few years. There's a lot of people that, particularly want something from me. I'm not too sure what. I don't have very much. But I take all of those as requests. I'm more than delighted to work with anybody, to help anybody anywhere I can. I don't really feel the sense of anybody putting a demand on me. I'm advocating that you start to find out how you're going to do that. I'm recommending you do that with a meditation. I have taught a multitude of different techniques, and they work for some people and some people not so. So I think we need to start out with is a meditation, and then this chat is like to say, oh, Chris, I took classes from you. I never could get what the hell you were talking about. So, blah, blah, blah. And we can have some conversations and see where we're going to go with that. Okay, that was one point to review. And the other point, I used to teach as in part of teaching setups. I used to teach setups for habitual questions or habitual issues. And I did find that writing where it was written from those guys out of, where was it at? New York University. They have an if-then plan, and I found that online. And it is more or less the same thing, but they had some statistics and some data behind it. So there's a little more credibility with theirs. I didn't do a whole lot of research in mine. And that's just a great procedure. You kind of set up ahead of time for loaded questions, right? And if you go to a restaurant, they're going to try to sell you dessert. So you can gear up, and that was the example. You can gear up a loaded question, was being able to think in your head, how many hours would I have to work out at the gym to take that off, right? Just like I do, and I think I said before, if I have pasta, any type of a carbohydrate, I weigh myself every morning, and I gain 3 pounds. That's what my weight goes up 3 pounds. I lose that 3 pounds over the next 2 to 3 days. Not a problem. If I have pasta every night for 7 or 8 days, I've just gone past a plateau. And it just sits there with me. And it takes months to see it just come off. It's kind of intimidating. So I have a range I can play in, and if I push it past the edge of that range, then I have to take some action to get me back into my range again. Is that making any sense? That's what I'm saying. If I can set up for the action ahead of time, it makes life simpler. I have pasta last night, then I say, okay, tonight, no pasta tomorrow night. I can start to set up for it. I can set myself some guidelines to be able to get ahead of it a little bit. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to be able to, you find a balance point. Bless you if you can have pasta every night and don't affect your weight. Great, not a problem whatsoever. And I've seen where they've done research where they've had people do pasta every night for 2 weeks and not gain weight because they were doing portion control and they were trying to do this and they had an exercise program and blah, blah, blah. And, I failed a long time ago at portion control. I just find that if I cook less, I eat less. But if I cook too much, I eat just too much. So my portion control has not been on the plate. Trying smaller plates means I just keep going back, I don't have any French blood in me. It's just like, I just don't sit there and talk and then eat the food. I eat the food when it's hot. I chow it all down really way too fast. We Germans were horrible at that. And then I keep going back till the food's gone. So, I have to portion out. I come in, I set up a couple hours before I'm going to eat. I portion it all out. I cook, or my wife will cook the food and I'll help her do some of the prep. And then we'll sit there and we'll eat the food. I don't have leftovers. We'll eat the food. It's all gone, but we don't make a lot. We make smaller portions. So how you have to go about your matrix, the way you operate, how you have to set up for that is what the if-then plan is all about. It's really setting up, not just with a story to run, but setting up as a lifestyle. Remember, it's an activity and a balance. Finding those two things is most certainly. Every day I come in at 4 o'clock thereabouts and prep and start to get my head around what I'm going to do food-wise, right? Because I eat one meal a day, I don't get hungry. So it starts to get me in a relationship, gets my body thinking, oh, food's coming down. Well, this is pretty good. In the next couple of hours, I'll be eating. I'll prep this out. Then I can look at portions. I'm looking, wow, that's way too much green beans for the two of us to eat. I'm just going to make half that bag. Those are the times I make those kind of decisions. Not when the food's in front of me, hot, steaming, it smells good and tastes good. Way too late for me to make a decision then. I don't have that kind of willpower. All right, if that makes sense? Okay. So it's a little bit of review of what we've got, what we talked on in that particular class. And I want to throw it out. We've got a few people on there. So if you guys got a question that you want to put it onto the airways and share that with everybody, most certainly you are welcome to. I have talked to, there's probably 7 or 8 people that can't make this Tuesday events because they've got something going on and they can't make it. And I've talked to most of them this week, and they're playing with this and they really liked it. They didn't really have any questions. They thought it was really clear. So this may be a relatively short chat, and we don't have a whole lot of people on here. But so you're welcome to go ahead and unmute your phone. If you've got a question, go ahead and ask me about either one of these. Okay. And if not, and you have questions that you want to email me, most certainly. And I see Nance up there. Nance, I've got it on my list to give you a call, I think, tomorrow. But do you have a question?
No, I'm questionless, but I'm listening.
Oh, okay. All right. No problem. So anyway, I do have a piece to give you a call. It's on my list of things to do. I'm not too sure. But anyway, so I'm actually going out of town on the 6th, and I'll be gone for a month. So I will be back that's why this chat was actually kind of 1 week earlier. I've been doing them about mid-month, and this is why it's so early in the month. And next month we'll be back to about the middle of the month again, and probably for the rest of the year.
Where are you going?
This one. I'm going to Taos, New Mexico, Santa Fe, Kansas, Denver. So I'll be driving around the countryside I've got a couple of talks. Deborah's got some music business, so we'll be out there driving several thousand miles over the next 4 weeks. Again, used to do that a lot. I used to be home 3 months a year. Now I'm home a lot more than that. I'm probably pretty much on the road or on a vacation or somewhere on a trip, maybe 3-4 months a year at most. So it's switched around. I'm home a lot more, which is what made webinars possible for me. I was on the road so much. It was really tough when you try to find Wi-Fi connections that are stable in hotel rooms and stuff and try to do these. It didn't work out really good. I know a few people that have been doing them that way, but it's a very awkward piece. But it's getting more sophisticated, and I may switch to, I'm kind of playing with the idea of putting up a green screen so I can kind of play with some background moods and stuff. Anyway, just some fun stuff coming down the pike that will come into play. All right, I'm going to do a little introduction into what we're going to be doing next month, and that is we're going to start to look at the ethics of food. I don't think ever we can sit down and put together a diet for you. I think that's that YouTube video I sent you out to recognize. I didn't want anybody to necessarily run down and subscribe to that. I think it's probably fairly new. I think that it's probably going to expand and it's going to become a better option. if you are a borderline diabetic and you do have a problem with your sugars, that might be a good option. I know if it's $350 or whatever that was for the test, and it's going to be lasting for a long period of time, it would be worthwhile. But if you go on that diet and you change, and in 2 months you need to go test again, then it could get very expensive. So I don't know how that's unfolding. And that's why I kind of would like to wait a little while till reviews come in and be able to have people say, wow, the greatest thing I ever did, I got a diet and I've been working it now for 6 months or 8 months, and it's working great for me. And my body's much better balanced. Those are the kind of reports that I'm looking back from it. But I love the concept, and I think that we need to even broaden it out in scope. Historically, we've had people that have come up with really great diets for ailment situations, for cancer cure diets, and so on and so forth. Did it work for some people? Yeah. And for everybody? No. Yeah. Is this going to work for, I think because it's custom made, we're finally getting to maybe a direction, or at least a bit of wisdom, where we start to realize that we cannot keep treating everybody the same. Carte blanche, same human, right? It's even with pet foods now, they're starting to say, certain type of dogs react to certain type of things. They got breed, they got pedigrees, so that diversity, if we're starting to acknowledge in animals, then I think it's time that we acknowledge it also in humans. And I think that there's so much uniqueness. It's unbelievable how diverse this whole package is. Remember, 40% of you is human DNA, and that 60%, mostly in the gut, is really just foreign DNA. So you're really, when you're eating to generate a balance, because that bacteria that's in there is on your side. It's friendly. It does a lot of work for you. You have a huge staff working for you. So you really need to be able to keep that friendly and start to stay healthy. And that's what we're looking at. So we'll start to look next month into the ethics of food. I will give you a couple of different pointers, and a couple of things that we'll be looking at is how to get a sense kinesthetically of balance, and how to start to take a look at what they're doing chemically. I think that we'll start to look at the ethics of turning food into a chemistry set, and so that's kind of what my goal is. And so anyway, thanks a lot for the little chat, and it's been fun. I'll wrap this up and make a copy and send it out so that whatever we talked on will be available to everybody that's on the program. All right, thanks.
Bye, Chris.
Bye, Chris.